Couch, everyone. Pasta Jardula here.
And I'm Fiorella.
And Oz is on the ones and twos, and a couple of the people hanging on out to watch us today. Want to thank everybody who's joining in on the YouTube, everybody who's joining in on the Rockfin. We have awesome guests this whole week. We are loaded, and every guest is just great. Fam, why don't you just jump right into it and introduce the guest for today, and then we'll just start right in.
Yeah, so I really want to thank Gonzalo. He's here today. We just asked, he doesn't have enough bandwidth for a video, but he's here. Welcome, Gonzalo.
Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so last time we had you on, it was before this got out of hand, and you told us, you felt like you were a marked man, and you were giving us the rundown as to what was going on. And of course, weeks later, there was this whole incident where everybody was afraid that because you were gone. Just give us a rundown as to what's happened since, and whatever you can say, of course.
Yeah, sure. On April 15th, I was picked up around 1:20 in the afternoon at my apartment by 8 agents of the SBU, the Ukraine State Security Service. They were heavily armed and Kevlared and uniformed. And I found that very flattering, to tell you the truth. One weaponless middle-aged guy, and they needed 8 guys to take him in. Anyway, I'm teasing, but yeah, they took me in, and basically for about a week, I was incommunicado. And yeah, that was my lost week. It was very terrifying and very tedious at the same time. And yeah, I can't really go into the details of it for the simple reason that I was explained very clearly that I'm going to be criminally charged. And I can't discuss the case or in the investigation because of the Ukraine law. And since I'm still here in Kharkov, also I'm not allowed to leave the city. But while I'm still here in Kharkov, I'm under the authority of the civil authorities. Sorry about that malapropism. And so, yeah, I really can't say more than that. But yeah, we'll see how this plays out. And frankly, I'm just trying to keep on going. The only unfortunate aspect is that they confiscated all of my electronics. I only have this old, it's an 8-year-old MacBook Air, and I'm doing everything from just this MacBook. And my phone and my other computers and stuff were all confiscated, and they changed all my passwords. And so I don't have access to my old channels or my old Twitter or anything like that. So I had to just start up a new Twitter and start up a new YouTube channel. And I've been posting videos on the YouTube channel every day. So yeah, that's where I'm at. And it's very exciting. Here we are in Ukraine, and the war is clearly getting to a crescendo. That seems very, very obvious.
Yeah, we have a ton of questions about that today, and even some of your tweets that you've been putting up. I want to just dive into so many things. But today is May 9th, right? It is Victory in Europe Day. What's different about this year's holiday as to May 9th's victory days of the past, specifically coming from the Europeans, Gonzalo?
Well, the Europeans are having like a complete meltdown with the Russophobia. I mean, they are just really masks off, kind of, because it's clear that the resentment and hatred that they felt towards the Russians has been long brewing. And they're just letting her rip, as it were, because it's just extraordinary. I've never seen anything like it, where it's if it's a Russian person, man, woman, or child, it's perfectly acceptable, socially acceptable in Europe to just screech at them and insult them and just vent all of their rage and frustration on these Russians who could be just average citizens that have no political power or any responsibility in anything that's going on. But it's just remarkable, for all this talk about how the Western democracies and liberalism are against collective punishment. Well, they are inflicting a collective punishment on Russians, which I find personally outrageous. But at the same time, I have to admit that a cynical side of me is kind of like, see, I told you so. I mean, you know how we all have the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other? Mm-hmm. And the cynical devil is giving me the elbow and saying, see, they are hypocrites. And they are. Oh, please don't use that picture of me. That it has the cynical smile on it. That's
I
just
like that one.
much.
That was a great one. And by the way, Gonzalo, Fee just has two devils on both sides. She don't have an angel and a devil, just so you know.
Gonzalo, you mentioned while you were gone, like there's been a lot of journalists and a lot of people that are not, I mean, on the ground, and you know a lot of them, right? Patrick Lancaster, Eva Bartlett's been on the ground. There's been several Ukrainians and Russians just covering this on the ground. And you mentioned people that were also gone, that they haven't been heard from by the SBU and by other factions. What can you say about just the danger of being a journalist right now on the ground, or being someone that's talking
Sure.
the
I have to
reality of what's
clarify. I've never claimed to be a journalist. I'm just some random YouTuber who happened to be here when the war happened. I didn't go looking for the war. The war came looking for me, and so I just want to emphasize that I'm not a journalist. And the thing is that what I provide really is analysis of what's going on. But I'm too chicken to go to the war. I mean, hell no, because I don't want to get shot. And I admire tremendously people like Patrick Lancaster, who I urge everybody to follow, because he's there on the ground interviewing people, really, going to the story. And he should be getting a Pulitzer Prize. I mean, his reporting is extraordinary. And of course, they dismiss him and this, that, and they call him a Putin bot or whatever. And it's so dismissive of the incredible work that he's doing. I so respect him. And Eva Bartlett, same thing. I'm lucky to know Eva, and she's a wonderful person, and she is so hardworking, and she's such a risk taker. And she went to the Donbass to do on the ground reporting, something that I haven't done because, like I said, I'm a big old chicken. Chicken is my middle name, and I'm just like a fat middle-aged guy, and all I do is just like mouth off, and they got me into trouble.
I know you got us into a lot of trouble when you went disappearing the day after my birthday. I couldn't even celebrate. We were getting into so many Twitter fights from the people who were just hating on you, and I'm like, oh my God, like how can you just wish harm on a person like Gonzalo just because he doesn't have the same ideology as you? It was quite like it was pretty weird, but it showed a lot of true colors out there. I can tell you that much.
Well, yeah, I agree completely, because I've never wished ill on somebody else that on politics or opinion I disagreed with. I might disagree with him. I might think they're a fool, but I would never actively wish them harm.
I know.
But the thing that's happened, the polarization that we've had in the West, is it kind of like gives people carte blanche to let out all the hatred and frustration that they have in their lives. That is not about the person that they're hating on, but it's other aspects and frustration of their lives that they channel into their politics. It's basically the Orwellian 2 minutes of hate kind of thing, where people, they're frustrated because they are saddled with student debt. They're frustrated because they're barely making ends meet. They're frustrated because they know that they have to walk on eggshells insofar as their political opinions, or they are going to get canceled. And so all of these frustrations and those impotences that build up in their psyche, when they find a means of expression, they just lash out. And all the hatred and fear, because ultimately all of this is underlaid by fear, all of that fear comes out and just spews out like a water jet from a fire, what you call it? You know what I'm talking about?
A fire.
And it just
hydrant.
Out. A fire hydrant. Thank you. Getting senile in my old age. Anyway, it just spews out. It's frankly, it's sad, but it's indicative of the society we have, where you have to toe a political line or else you're homeless. That seems to me more of the case, and I don't mean to insult anybody who might be on the left, but I think that you will agree that it tends to happen more on the left than on the right, probably because the left at this time has cultural ascendancy. And so it sort of like polices its own members, and everybody has to toe a line. And if they're not obeisant to that line, they can get into a lot of trouble. They get canceled, they lose their employment opportunities and whatnot. Yeah. And that just builds up hatred and resentment. And that's what I think is going on.
Yeah, it's crazy. I want to talk a little bit more about the Azovstal steel mill with the underground bunkers, because recently both sides have said that they have gotten all the civilians out of there. Close to
Yeah.
200 civilians were taken away on buses. However, Russia, I believe, is still demanding that they lay down their weapons in these bunkers and then surrender. Whereas if the what's referred to as the mainstream media, the Azov battalion now is what they're calling them, the Azov regiment, they won't call them Nazis, is refusing to do so. What are we going to see in the next couple days when it comes to this last? I believe this is like one of the last holdouts of Mariupol left that the Russians aren't controlling. And what also do you think? Not only are we going to see, but what do you think we're going to see that's underneath there?
Okay. First of all, at this point, it's a police operation. Okay, it's not a military operation because these people aren't going anywhere. The exits are few and far between, and the Russians don't need that many soldiers to keep an eye on those exits. And so, it's a police action. And those poor men, they should surrender, but of course they're afraid to surrender because most of them are really hardcore neo-Nazis. And so they know that the Russians have no love for them. The Russians have been very, very good about treating their their prisoners of war very decently, giving them medical attention and so forth. And I don't think that it's just Russian PR, although of course the Russians will be using that footage to give PR. I mean, everybody does that. That's not the issue, but I think it's genuine on the one hand. But insofar as the Azovstal thing is a nuisance. It's militarily insignificant because Mariupol has been taken. The military importance of Mariupol is in Russian hands. The Azovstal steelworks, it doesn't matter. I mean, it really doesn't. It only matters insofar as the people in there. And by the way, the fact that they finally released all those civilians pretty much proves the point that those Azovstal holdouts were using those civilians as human shields. They only got out because of UN intermediation. And those Azovstal resistance fighters, quote unquote, which I think is asinine to call them that, I think that they're just thugs, they realized that there was no way for them to hold on to those civilians in the face of the UN trying to broker a way out for those civilians without them looking as the bad guys. And so that's why they finally relented and let go of all those civilians. But remember, a week ago, they were demanding a ton of food and medicine for every 15 civilians that they released. I mean, that's what hostage takers do. They make demands and leverage the civilians, the defenseless, weaponless civilians that they have, to get what they want. And so, I have no sympathy for those men. They're pigs, as far as I'm concerned, for using civilians like that. And once a fighting soldier is soldier, fair is fair. But holding on to civilians, harming civilians, that's beyond the pale. And I personally know people, Ukrainians, who are from Mariupol, and I've known them from before the war, who told me that civilians were being shot at by Azovstal and other Zelensky regime forces. And so, the stories coming out of Mariupol are absolutely true, that the Azov battalion people used civilians as human shields. They would shoot at them to prevent them from leaving the city. They would shoot up their cars. And I heard this from people that I know personally, that I can give first and last names, who are from Mariupol. And a woman I know personally that I've known for, 8, 9 months, I suppose. I was talking to her about it, and she was extremely worried because her parents and aunt and uncle were there because she was from there. I had no idea. And she was the one who told me, unbidden, she told me about how her family members were being used as human shields. Okay, so it's not Russian propaganda, it's real. The propaganda is what the Zelensky regime is putting out, what the US and European mainstream media is putting out, claiming that these people in the Azovstal, the Azov battalion people, are freedom fighters or something like that. They're not. They're thugs. They're neo-Nazis. They're scum, as far as I'm concerned. And they should be treated as such. But of course, the mainstream media in the United States and Europe, it's not media. It's not a free press. It is a propaganda arm of the globalists. That's what it is. And we should be calling a spade a spade. Sorry for ranting.
No, and you're right. I mean, I see this all the time in independent sources, especially on Telegram. But there is something that I think Vanessa Beeley talked about where they're mimicking the Syrian model, particularly in that area, the Syrian model that the West and NATO used before, and it's easier
Yeah.
to spot once you've seen it before, right?
Yeah.
And in Western media right now, what we are seeing is, Bono and his little concert in Kiev, and then also Trudeau also visited the same region. What do you make of that? The last few visits have been very interesting, to say the least.
I think it's so pathetic. I mean, first of all, what is it with Trudeau? He had to flee the city because he had COVID just when the convoy was there in Ottawa. But he flies God knows how many thousands of miles, crossing an ocean and a continent to visit Kiev, and right in the middle of a war. So, I mean, what's that all about? But anyway, I think that these people are jokes. They're pathetic. And it seems to me that they confuse the information war with the actual war. And, they think that a PR win actually matters. It doesn't, a PR, public relations, the propaganda effort, it doesn't capture a village. It doesn't take out a howitzer, it doesn't shoot down a plane. And so I listen to all of this, and at this point, I think it's a joke. But what I'm deeply concerned about is how misinformed people are. And when people are severely misinformed, they wind up making horrible decisions. And so my concern really with all this propaganda, and frankly, the effectiveness of this propaganda, because let's not kid ourselves, all of this propaganda is working not only on the people in Europe and the United States, but also on the leadership classes who are believing their own bullshit. They're drinking the Kool-Aid themselves. And so my fear is that they are going to wind up believing something that is completely baseless, that is not real, and they will wind up making horrible decisions. And the horrible decision, and the thing that frightens me deeply, is this recent normalization of nuclear war. This frightens me very, very much. And I think that everybody ought to be extremely worried about this, because you don't fool around with that kind of stuff. And once that starts going, you don't know where it ends. And so I'm terrified of that, to tell you the truth.
I saw a headline the other day. The U.S. should prove that they can win a nuclear war.
Mhm.
How do you prove that you can win a nuclear war without having a nuclear war? It's very, very scary. And, this whole time, since 2014, I mean, we can go way back, Gonzalo, to the history of how Ukraine has always been used in some form of a buffer war where the West was always trying to get involved. But if you just look back to 2014 with Victoria Nuland and Jeffrey Pyatt and what they did, and eventually just pretty much naming who the successor would be, and then seeing everything we're seeing today, I kept on screaming, this is a nuclear power we're jostling with on their border. This is some scary, scary stuff. But what's been really scary is the way they've suppressed a lot of voices. When, we're taking down RT off a lot of channels, whatnot, and cutting down Sputnik on YouTube. Now we have this ministry of truth with I can't even remember her name. I call her Scary Poppins at that.
Nina
Jankowicz.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Scary Poppins, I think, is the best. She earns that after she thinks.
That's a good name.
What do you think? How do you think? What's your thoughts about the Ministry of Truth? But furthermore, how do you think this will play into the reliable information and news that's coming out of the Ukraine?
That's a very good question. What do they call it? The governance board, the misinformation governance board?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Disinformation Governance Board. Yeah.
There you go.
I think it's absurd. Look, see, the only people who are afraid of misinformation are people who are peddling lies. See, have you noticed something? Like, for instance, these people who proclaim that the Earth is flat, the famous flat earthers. And by the way, full disclosure, sometimes just for fun, I'll pretend to be one just to irritate and troll people. But of course, I'm not. I mean, I do know that the Earth is a globe, or roughly globe shape. But anyway, the point. See, nobody thinks of banning a flat earther because everybody knows it's absurd. Nobody thinks of banning people who deny the moon landing because, again, people who know realize that it's an absurd accusation, And so you just laugh about it, just like you would laugh at, for instance, the News of the World that shows some alien saying that he endorses a presidential candidate or something. You think it's stupid and funny because it's obviously not true. If something is obviously not true, you don't have a problem with people knowing about it. You only worry about something that you fear is true. And that's why you silence it. You don't silence things that you know are ridiculous. You don't silence things that you know everybody knows is just foolish. You silence the things that you suspect might be true or you're afraid people will realize is true. And so all of these efforts at censorship, blocking Sputnik and RT, and now this governance board, which is, Ministry of Truth, it just shows the desperation of the regime. And we cannot talk about a democracy anymore because the United States and Western Europe, they are not democratic. They are not reflective of the will of the people. The will of the people, the protests in Canada that pretty much proved that the governments of the Western democracies, so-called Western democracies, do not listen to the will of the people. They ignore it. They only listen to the will of the people when that voice goes along with the interests of the people in power. The people in power are those who have money and who use their money to buy the politicians so as to advance their business interests. That's what we have going. We have this war going on, and the companies that are making money, companies like Raytheon, General Dynamics, General Electric, all the weapons manufacturers, they're the ones pushing it. They feed money to the politicians who push it on all the Sunday talk shows. And the people who would actually have to go and fight these wars, well, they're against it. Of course, they're going to be against it. But of course, their voices are not heard. They're the people. They're the people who would actually have to fight these wars, but they are either ignored, or if they actually get around to speaking their minds, they get silenced. Like what happened with the convoy in Canada. I can't emphasize enough the Canada convoy because that was indicative of how far the democracies have fallen. All of those truckers with legitimate grievances, and they were persecuted. Some of them lost their bank accounts, their livelihoods. They were targeted for persecution by the government. And nobody said anything. And the so-called free press, the media, they were cheerleading the government's efforts to silence these people.
Mhm.
Yep.
I mean, like, what the hell? What kind of democracy is that? That's not a democracy.
Yeah, I mean they were the Nazis, Gonzalo, not the
Yeah.
Azov Battalion. They were the Nazis.
They
There
were
was
the
one
Nazis.
Nazi flag,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden the whole thing was the right-wing Nazis, and we actually lost a lot of friends over that particular incident because there was a segment of the so-called anti-imperialist left, which I consider myself a part of, that was saying they were completely just useless because they were ruled by right-wing oligarchs, and that's everybody that was pushing that. So they completely threw it off and didn't even talk about the fact that their money was confiscated. That is a precedent that was set that affects any sort of movement, social movement that a lot of these people tend to want to organize around. Completely makes it impossible now because they could do that to you at any given time. And so that, and then now we're at the point where I think they're banning in the EU, they're banning the St. George ribbon, which marks the ribbon that it was like the orange and black ribbon that marks the defeat of the Nazis after World War II. And they're banning that ribbon. They're banning everything that's Russian, and nobody's saying a goddamn thing about it because it's Putin's propaganda.
Right.
So I think a lot of people are just waiting on a billionaire or somebody to save the internet, right? What is your opinion on Elon Musk and he had a whole meltdown because he thinks his life is threatened. Do you think that Elon Musk is a threat to anybody at this point in the West?
My thinking is that, look, why would anybody realistically think that Elon Musk is going to save the day of free speech? I mean, did another billionaire, Donald Trump, save the day? No, he didn't. I mean, it's weird. We put our hopes in these billionaires, And that kind of like gives the game away, that we realize that we live in an oligarchy where the rich men control our destinies. And so we have to find the right rich guy who will support our pet cause. Our pet cause, of course, being living free and being able to speak our minds without, horrifying consequences, right? That mentality, we have to break up these oligarchs. And look, I'm a guy on the right. I would be considered right wing. I am a conservative, a hardcore conservative. I am against a whole bunch of government stuff and all the rest of it. But the oligarchs and the monopolies that have been allowed to be created that undermine free competition and concentrate power in the hands of very, very few players, I am totally against that, because it's anti-capitalistic, because it's monopolistic. It's basically creating the conditions where you will have an oligarchy as we have today in the West. And so I am so radically against the oligarchs, and I'm so radically against the notion that an oligarch can save us. Because if we have that mentality, we are going to be looking for a savior, and there will never be such a man, such a savior. Jesus Christ died on the cross 2,000 years ago. And so far, I don't think the second coming is here. And I sure know that Elon Musk is not the second coming. Okay, that I know. And so for us to be depending on one man is a mistake. We have to depend on ourselves. And what we have to do is, I think that we have to turn up the heat. And I understand how terrified people are of the consequences that can befall one if you cross the government. You can lose your bank accounts, let alone your employment. You can lose the ability to fly. You can lose the ability to even leave the country. As has happened to Canadians. And so but my thinking is that we have to just work up some courage and all band together and fight this, because this is dictatorship. This is what tyranny looks like. I'm going to tell you, I'm from Chile. I lived during the Pinochet dictatorship, and I'm not kidding. There is less freedom in the West than during the Pinochet dictatorship. And that's a fact. And during the Pinochet dictatorship, you could tell people that you were a communist. There were communist newspapers that you could buy at the local kiosk, right on the street corner there. I saw it. I saw it. It was a newspaper called El Clarín. It was a communist daily, or every 2 days or something like that. And there was more freedom in the Pinochet dictatorship than there is today in the West. And I'm not kidding. I wish I were. I wish I were exaggerating, but that's the truth. Okay? And so only the people can solve this. There is no one politician who can lead us to the promised land. There's no Moses figure. We are going to have to be our own Moses, and all together fight against these people. And to tell you the truth, I think that the coming economic collapse, quite frankly, which is clearly in the post, I mean, it's on its way, and it's going to hit us by the end of the year. I think that might be one of the best things that ever happens to us, because even though it's going to cause enormous social destruction and social chaos, it will also provide the opportunity to overthrow this oligarchic system that we have, this monopolistic system where corporations are trying to control us so they can milk us for every cent that we have. It'll finally be able to take this yoke off of us, to rip this face hugger, this vampire face hugger off of us and get rid of it finally. Because that's how I see the current monopolistic oligarchic system.
Yep. That's what I say. Once we get rid of these psychopaths, then we can get in a room and decide what's best for us. But until we get rid of these psychopaths, we're going to be ruled by them. I have a question for you. This is kind of interesting. This is still kind of going along with what happened today with May 9th being Victory Day and stuff like that. But this is a tweet you make, and I've been paying a little attention to what's going on. I want to provide a little bit more context and then hand it over to you. This is a tweet you retweeted from Samuel Rahmani. The Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman sent a congratulatory message to Vladimir Putin today on Victory Day. This statement was routine, but Saudi Arabia is breaking with the U.S. on Russia once again. I told you guys in a recent video that the U.S. is getting ready to demonize Saudi Arabia in preparation for a color revolution against MBS and then a full-on invasion. I'm telling you, this is coming in the Middle East. Now, I watched your video. You pointed out some great things. The fact that now all of a sudden they're breaking information that the hijackers from 9/11 had contact with the Saudi government. And that's like, thank you, Captain Obvious. We already kind of knew that. We already have suspicions that the United States government was involved and also knew what the Saudis were doing. And you just can look into Joe Biden and his part and what he played. But there is a little bit something more to this. MBS wasn't the heir to the crown prince. During the Trump years, he was able to get in there and have somewhat of a regime change. Biden has always had a relationship with Mohammed bin Nayef, who was the crown prince. So a lot of people thought when Biden got in that he already might be eyeing MBS to get rid of him. Now with all this information coming, I think your tweet is dead on, that this is what we're going to see next, that the fact that they've been kind of like floating it out there that they will pay Russia or they'll sell Russia oil in exchange in rubles and everything, that's a kind of sign. You're like, hold on a second over here. Give a little bit more context to this tweet and what you think is going to be coming when it comes to MBS and Saudi Arabia in the near future.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that my new name is Gonzalo the Magnificent, who can see the future. But no, I mean, kidding aside, the game was given away as far as I'm concerned when Mohammed bin Salman started making noises about selling Saudi oil in renminbi, the Chinese currency.
Yes, that's not rubles.
It's called sometimes the yuan, sometimes the RMB. I actually don't know why it has these various names, but it's not important. The important point is that Mohammed bin Salman started making noises about this. And the relationship between Mohammed bin Salman and the Biden administration is not the best for the reasons that you explained, that Biden basically backed the other horse. Mm-hmm. And Mohammed bin Salman is not yet king. He's the guy, but there's still some jockeying to be done until he's actually crowned. He's not the king, so he's de facto ruler, but not the de jure ruler. And so I think that there are a lot of factors at play here. Now, of course, the United States needs Saudi Arabia to sell its oil in dollars because what it does is, this is an old deal that was struck in 1974 that people don't notice it because of Watergate, but it was a crucial deal because the United States went off the gold standard in 1971, and that ushered in all kinds of inflation. And in 1974, the Treasury Secretary at the time, a man named Simon, was the one who negotiated a deal whereby the United States would protect the House of Saud, not Saudi Arabia, mind you, the House of Saud, guarantee the protection, the military protection of the House of Saud, and sell weapons and some other goodies. And in exchange, the House of Saud would ensure that all Saudi oil was sold in dollars and the exceedance were parked in US Treasury bonds. That is, that with all those dollars that the Saudis got, they would take those dollars and buy Treasury bonds. And this is the famous petrodollar. And this is the reason that the United States can have these enormous deficits and trade deficits and still have a functioning currency. Now, this currency is collapsing, as we see, and we can see it with the inflation going on. And we've seen it with the money printing over the last 2-3 years. And so the currency is collapsing. And so Mohammed bin Salman is thinking realistically that the dollar might go the way of the dodo. So it might be smart to exit the dollar and go into a currency that might be a little bit harder long term. And that's why he was negotiating with the Chinese. And of course, the Chinese buy a boatload of oil from them, several boatloads. And so it made sense from the point of view of Mohammed bin Salman and the Saudis. But to the United States, this is an existential threat, because once the Saudis start selling a substantial fraction of their oil in some other currency, then there isn't going to be the demand for dollars. Because the way that the system works is very simple. If you are, say, Japan, and you produce goods and services and you have yen, you need to buy oil for your factories and all the rest of it. So you take your yen and you go to Saudi Arabia and say, here, I have yen. And Saudis say, no, we only take dollars. So you, as a Japanese company or factory, you have to go out into the open market and buy dollars. You have to trade your yen for dollars. And what's that? You're creating demand for the dollar. And when something has a demand, it goes up in price. And so this is the mechanism by which the dollar has been supported in terms of value. Other countries, I mean, not countries per se, but the factories and the industries in the various countries, they need to buy oil from Saudi Arabia and the other OPEC countries. And they can only buy that oil in dollars. And so they take their currency, be it the Japanese yen, the euro, the peso, whatever it is, and they go and buy dollars. And this props up the value of the dollar, and they take those dollars and go and buy oil. That's how the system works. And it's worked to the benefit of the United States and to the prosperity of the United States. And also, it's allowed the United States to max out its credit card insofar as government debt. That's why the United States can have such relatively low taxes compared to other advanced economies like Japan, like Europe, such low taxes and such high services. Because you see, all of these services and the low taxes, it creates a deficit. But that deficit is essentially covered by this system. If the system breaks down, then all of a sudden you're not going to be able to afford the big military. You're not going to be able to afford the social security system. You're not going to be able to afford all kinds of other government programs. And you're going to have to raise taxes to cover the much lower things that you are giving your citizens. And that's going to cause a revolt, because all of a sudden people are going to say, hey, you used to give me all this good stuff, daddy government, but now you're not giving me all this good stuff and you're taking more of my money in taxes. What's going on? So this is the problem that the US government finds itself. And the Biden administration, unfortunately, is at the helm of the US government at this critical time. And the people in the Biden administration are morons, quite simply. I mean, they are fools. They are stupid, ideological people. They don't know what they're doing. And so here we are. We're in trouble. We're in a crisis moment with the absolutely worst people possible at the helm. And so, the United States is kind of screwed. I'm sorry if this explanation was a bit long-winded, but it's a complicated subject, but it deserves to be understood so you understand why we're about to hit a brick wall.
Yeah. And thank you for correcting me. I wasn't that Saudi Arabia or MBS was going to take rubles. They were going to take the yuan. Yuan. I just got confused there and stuff like that. But yes, the fact that he pointed out that maybe they were going to do it, I'm sure there was probably he got a lot of calls from a lot of his cousins going, "What are you, crazy? Are you trying to get us killed over here?" So,
yeah.
Sorry, fam. Go ahead.
Just like going along with that, though, what do you see happening in the United States? I mean, we live in the United States. You live in Ukraine, but you're an American citizen too. Like, how it is here.
I can tell you what's going to happen to Europe. Europe is screwed. Okay, Europe, they went off the United States goaded the Europeans into doing all these sanctions against Russia. But you see, the Europeans need Russian commodities and raw materials in order to survive industrially. And in terms of food, that's something else that people don't seem to realize. The Europeans need Russian food, okay? And so they literally, cut off their nose to spite their face. They made an enemy out of Russia, and Russia has not really responded. And so they are going to respond. And I think the response is going to be devastating. I mean, right now, it's already devastating. The sanctions that they applied, that the Europeans and the Americans applied towards Russia, have boomeranged and hit the Europeans upside the face.
Yeah, they have.
They are hurting far more than the Russians. The Russians are getting over it because, you see, you can live without an iPhone. You can live perfectly well without H&M clothes. You can live without a BMW, I'm 54 years old. Remarkably, I've lived my entire life without owning a BMW, and I'm very happy about it. But I can't live without food. I can't live without gasoline. I can't live without gas to heat my home. I can't live without those things. And those are the things that Russia provided Europe. And now Europe, with these sanctions, is basically cutting off the gas supply. And now they're talking about sanctioning Russian oil. And you see, the Russians, they have other customers, okay? It's not like the Europeans are the only customers. They have other people who are happy to buy their natural gas, their petroleum, their food. The Russians recently signed a deal for 2 more pipelines pipelines for natural gas to go from the Siberian fields all the way to China. It's called the Power of Siberia, actually the Power of Siberia 2, because they already have a Power of Siberia 1 pipeline that is fully operational. They've got customers in China, they've got customers in Vietnam, in Korea, North and South. They have customers for what they are selling. Okay, it's like the Chris Rock joke about drugs. You know that if you're selling drugs, you don't have to do anything. The drugs sell themselves. Well, same thing. You know, the gasoline, the petroleum, the natural gas, the food. This stuff sells itself. You don't have to advertise. Okay, there are going to be people banging on your door to buy this stuff. So the Europeans sanctioning the Russians only hurts the Europeans because the Europeans, number one, they are a net food importer. That is, they need food from outside, number one. And number two, they need petroleum products. They need natural gas products. They also need something else that people don't seem to realize. For the food production that they have, they need fertilizer, exactly right, which is produced by natural gas, Russian natural gas. The Russians are, and the Ukrainians are among the largest natural fertilizer producers in the world. And so the Europeans are hurting themselves. The Europeans are going to go hungry by the end of the year. And they're going to have rolling blackouts by the end of the year. And they are going to go cold by the end of the year. This winter, 2022-23, is going to be one of the most devastating in European history. I mean, nothing will come even close in anybody's lifetime, okay? You're gonna have to go back to the Great Depression or Jesus, go back all the way to Bismarck in the 19th century before you come across something as horrifying economically as what's gonna hit Europe now.
Yeah.
And the spillover from Europe is gonna hit the United States. It's undoubtedly.
And they're doing it to themselves. They're doing
Yes.
it to themselves. That's the crazy part about this whole thing is I mean, what's the new guy in Germany? I can't even remember. Is it Schultz?
Olaf Scholz.
Oh
Olaf
my
Scholz.
God. They're doing it to themselves.
Yeah. I mean, it's so insane that you say to yourself, no, this can't be true. And you start like rereading stuff and looking the figures over and you're like, no, I must be wrong. Nobody can be this stupid. But they are. I mean, that's the thing. They are. It's so mind-boggling. And the thing is, see, also, I've tweeted several times the following. I've said that it's very clear to me that Olaf Scholz and Ursula von der Leyen, the chairwoman of the European Commission, and Boris Johnson and Emmanuel Macron are clearly KGB agents, deep cover agents that Putin controls. Because that's the only explanation for how they are torpedoing their own countries and their own continent. No other explanation makes sense because you cannot believe how stupid these people are. But in fact, they are. That's the horrifying part. Sorry for ranting. When I get on this hobby horse, I can't understand the stupidity.
So going off of that, Gonzalo, there's this, question that everybody keeps asking, that Paz and I keep discussing, is Russia actually opposed to the coming of this globalist agenda, this new world order? Is Vladimir Putin actually opposed to that? Is this some sort of controlled demolition of the European Union and of the Western American economy? Is everybody in on this thing where they're like, okay, well, we don't care how much we're going to screw the Europeans and the American people? There's that Victoria Nuland quote, where she was like, fuck the EU, whatever, fuck NATO. Where she was like saying, what, I don't care about these people. So really, what do you think is behind this? Do you think there is an opposition from Vladimir Putin and Russia? And do you think that this is some sort of controlled demolition? Because you just said like they're either that stupid or they're in on it. So which do you think it is?
No. Realistically, in all seriousness, this is not a controlled demolition. This is not the World Economic Forum's master plan of the Great Reset. No, this is just a bunch of very incompetent people. They're very smart. Do keep in mind, they're very intelligent. I mean, they have high IQs, okay? But what happens is that, see, the incentives, the process by which they rose to positions of leadership are not the same as those that actually test to make sure that you have competent leadership. You see this distinction. You can be very, very smart and jump through all the hoops and become a leader in the system that exists in the United States and Europe without actually having the qualities necessary, the wisdom and the judgment to be good leaders. And so all of these people are thinking very, very short term. And all of these people also, they are so used to the fact that Europe and the United States have been so powerful for so many decades that they take it as a given. They don't understand the fundamental fragility of that power and how easily that power can be degraded by misuse, by incompetent decision making. You have to understand this. They actually think that they have godlike powers and they can do whatever they want. And they are genuinely surprised that the Russian economy did not implode when they waved their sanctions wand and said, presto changeo, Russia, you're going to get sanctioned and destroyed. And they weren't destroyed. And they're like, what happened? It's always worked before. And they are genuinely confused. They don't have a master plan. I mean, if only they did, it would make more sense, but they don't. They're just stupid. They're just stupid and incompetent. And the system is designed to protect them and shield them from the possibility of actual information that can give them, the possibility of making reasonable decisions. Okay, I mean, I have to emphasize this because there are so many people who go off the cliff and say, that it's all a big conspiracy and that it's controlled demolition and that's all part of a plan. There is no plan. I mean, I can tell you, I don't want to sound like a jerk, okay? But in my own life, I've been fortunate enough to meet many very influential people and be very on the periphery of very interesting events and to see different groups of people interacting. And I've noticed that the generations that are currently in power are fundamentally stupid. They are remarkably stupid. Like Justin Trudeau, for instance. He is a fool. He is an absolute fool. And he is controlled by, some of his staffers, Freeland, and a few other people. And those people are ideologues. What we are experiencing now is late stage communism under Brezhnev. During if people recall, people who are my age or perhaps a little bit older will remember that during the late 60s and into the 70s, the Soviet Union was ruled by old entrenched bureaucrats who didn't have the foggiest notion of how things were. And it was the Brezhnev era. Brezhnev was the secretary of the Communist Party at the time, and he was the leader of the Soviet Union. And he was an old, drunk bureaucrat who was running things, and he didn't have the foggiest notion of what he was doing. That's basically what's happening. And we have ideologues and incompetence. Look at Joe Biden, who's senile, and the people behind him running things, they're ideologues, people like this Nina Janowitz person, like Jen Psaki, for instance. She's a poster girl for this ideological view of the world that refuses to look at reality and takes everything or observes everything through a lens of ideology. That's what's going on, a lack of realism and an ideological blindness. That's what's going on. And it's hard to accept, but that's what it is, okay? It's not part of a plan. I wish it were, because then it would make more sense. It's just stupid decisions. It's no different from the stupid decisions that led to the disaster of the First World War. And that's the thing that really scares me. Yeah.
I don't know if I completely agree with you. I think last time, that's where we disagreed a little bit. And it's good to have these conversations too as well. But Fam, did you want to follow up on anything over there real quick, or do you want me to ask this last quick question?
Yeah, I was just going to say, well, do you think Putin is actually, this is like an opposition though, in terms of jumping directly opposing the Western hegemony, Western attempt to control, etc.
Well, the famous Munich speech in February of 2007, I suggest that everybody reads it, because that was basically a declaration of war. And the war that Putin is fighting is against the unipolar war. The unipolar world. Sorry about that. He is against the United States being the only power. He thinks that it's not a good thing for the world to be so centralized. And he is in favor of a multipolar world where you have large powers that are essentially regional powers. And those are the different poles around the world, which makes complete sense. It makes complete sense that, for instance, the larger, more powerful economies and countries like China, like Russia, like India, like the United States, like Brazil, they each be a pole in the different continents. And this multipolar world would have actual diversity as opposed to this ersatz diversity that keeps being pushed on us. And of course, the United States and the people in power in the United States want to maintain their power. They want to maintain this global hegemony that only really existed for a short time after the collapse of the Soviet Union and until shortly after the 9/11. In those 10, 13 years roughly, that's when the United States had absolute power. But the other countries have grown, they've become richer, and the United States has become poorer because of mismanagement. And so the United States is resisting this multipolar world, and Vladimir Putin is very clear. He wants a multipolar world. He doesn't want to have to kowtow to Washington. And that's why we have this proxy war going on over Ukraine, because it's this unipolar world that the United States is pushing versus the multipolar world that Vladimir Putin and certainly the Chinese want. And Vladimir Putin understands what's going on. And he wants no part of the American unipolar hegemony because, quite simply, so many of the values of the United States are values that are inimical to having a healthy, thriving society. And it's as simple as that. And a lot of people in the United States don't like to face the fact, but this kind of the very, very bad education in the United States, the tolerance of decadences and degeneracies. That's just, what is going on here? What is basically child abuse being, pushed on children by their teachers, and the whole puberty blocker, transgender thing that it's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, we don't allow children to drink alcohol before they're 21. And we're saying, oh yeah, if the kid decides at 12 that he's gonna go on puberty blockers, that's perfectly fine. What the hell is that all about? That's insane. And that kind of insanity, that kind of permissiveness, that kind of hyper tolerance where there are simply no moral limits whatsoever, clearly Vladimir Putin is against that vision. Clearly the other people in the Kremlin are as well, because they're not stupid. The people in the Kremlin are exceptionally well prepared. The same goes for the Chinese high echelon of the bureaucracy there. They are very, very capable people, and they are people who have observed the United States extremely closely, far more closely than the American leaders have observed either Russia or China. And so when they look at the United States and they see what liberalism has become, and I'm talking not liberalism in the political liberal conservative, I'm talking about liberalism in the Enlightenment sense, they see how liberalism that had a great flowering during the 19th century and the 20th century has decayed and degenerated now in the early 21st century. And they want no part of that, justifiably so. They want a strong, healthy society that grows in a wholesome manner and not a society like the ones in Europe that is basically exhausted and dying, or the United States, where it's polarized and decadent and degenerate. And they don't want a part of that. And frankly, I don't blame them. I mean, look, I can live in the West if I want to tomorrow. I don't live in the West because I don't want any part of what I see going on in Europe and the United States. I don't want it. I want a society that is healthy and wholesome for my own children. And the Russians and the Chinese pretty much think the same.
Gonzalo, we're seeing on these maps posted by Muna of Alabama that pretty much the Russians are now controlling all the eastern parts of Ukraine. And in fact, on their map, you're now living in or close to Mother Russia. We've heard Scott Ritter talk about the fact that this war is all but over. Are you seeing the same thing on the ground? And how much longer do you predict that this Russian military is going to continue. I also want to I would also like to add that they've also taken part of the southern territories, pretty much cutting off the Black Sea from Ukraine.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that? And as far as, is this thing all but over? And how much longer are we going to see military action?
It's over. Okay, it's over. I mean, to
It's
say
over.
that, yeah, it's over. It's been over. I would say, yeah, I would say that when they finally took Mariupol, that was the end.
Yeah.
And yeah, like for instance, like today, the Russians pulled back from the east of the city of Kharkov. I'm in Kharkov. I'm near the city center. And about 20 kilometers from here, what's that, roughly 13 miles or so, they pulled back, the Russians pulled back, basically to straighten out their line, their front, and to shorten it. And so they pulled back, and the Ukrainians advanced, but they didn't actually capture it. They just advanced over ground that had been ceded. The big story is Popasnaya, which is this little town. It's a little burg in eastern Ukraine, but it's a key position because it's elevated over the surrounding land, and it was part of this encirclement that the Russian army is carrying out against the eastern Ukrainian, the Zelensky forces in East Ukraine, which number something like 50 to 60,000. Nobody's quite sure how many. There are all kinds of conflicting numbers. We'll know when the war is over, but it's certainly in that range of 40 to 60,000 soldiers. And the Russians are grinding them down because the Russians are, the Russian mode of war is a war of attrition, of slowly grinding down whomever they come across. That's their specialty. They don't do flashy maneuvers and big breakouts. They just grind away every day and minimize their own casualties. And current estimates of Russian killed in action, and this is verified by the BBC of all people, that they did like a very extensive study to see how many dead Russians. And the number that they came up with was about 2,000. 2,000, that's it. And the number of confirmed KIA, killed in action, Ukraine, is at least 25,000, perhaps as high as 32,000 at this time.
Yeah.
And so you see what the Russians are doing. They're just grinding it down.
Did you see the report from the Ukrainians saying they killed 11 or 12 Russian generals?
Oh yeah, they keep killing Russian generals all the time, and then these Russian generals keep rising up from the dead and appearing in parades and stuff. I mean, the Russians must have a hell of technology to raise these generals from the dead. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's all kinds of bullshit. Look, when the Ghost of Kiev came out on the second day of combat, I was like, this is baloney. This is not true. Come on, man. Some fighter pilot shot down 6 planes on the first day, and then it became 20 planes and 40 planes, Oh man. And then finally, a week or so ago, they said, oh, well, yeah, we sort of like made that up. I mean, yeah. That's the thing. See, so the thing I've noticed about the information warfare is that the Russians, the Russians have been very careful that when their ministries of foreign affairs or Ministry of Defense put any information out there, it's always, as far as I know, it's accurate. When they put information out there, okay? When they say, X, when they say X happened, it's true. I'll take it to the bank. Sometimes the Russian Ministry of Defense or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will not say something that did happen. But that's a lie of omission. Yeah, but they're not telling you a lie. They're just not telling you the truth or the whole truth. Okay. But the Zelensky regime tends to tell lies and tell whoppers of lies. I mean, lies that are just like, come on, man, that can't be true. Lies that just prima facie are just nonsense. Yeah. And so whenever the Russians say something, I believe them. Okay, unless compelling evidence comes up that it's not true, because they never lie, because they're smart that way, because they realize that if they blow their credibility with stupid stories, then the PR value is killed. They have to tell the truth. Okay, and when something bad happens to them, they just don't mention it. Okay, but they're not telling a lie. They're just pretending it didn't happen, or not saying anything, or no comment, or like with the Moskva. it's pretty clear that it was hit by a missile of some sort. The Russians are saying, well, it had a fire. Well, technically, of course, if you get hit by a missile, it does have a fire. Okay, so they're not lying, you know, but they're being cagey about it, and it's probably because they got hit by a missile. Okay, but the Russians tell whoppers like, you know, the 13 sailors who were killed on Snake Island, and then they were all alive, and they were actually 82 and not 13, and all kinds of lies like this. So. Yeah, that's my thinking. Actually, I lost track of the original question. What was it?
You answered it. It's all but over. Pretty much. That was.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
This is what's going to happen. Yeah. The Eastern Ukrainian army, the Zelensky regime army, is encircled, pretty much encircled, and the Popasnaya battle, where they captured this town, is crucial. Because now the Russians are going to have an even better position with artillery to just annihilate Zelensky regime forces. And so it's going to be a slow grinding. And now the Russians, they're in no hurry. They have time on their side. They control everything about the battlefield. So they're just going to grind away. They're going to continuously rotate their fighters, because that's what they've been doing. They take out battalion groups and replace them with fresh troops back from Russia. Okay, whereas the Ukraine armed forces can't rotate forces because they don't have any relief forces. They don't have anything, and they don't have the transportation either. Because one of the things that nobody's talking about in the West is that every day the Russians are sending missile strikes across Ukraine from tip to toe. They are hitting railway stations, they are hitting fuel depots, they are hitting command centers, they are hitting everything every day. And every day it's increasing a little bit. Every day they're turning up the heat just a little bit more. Okay, and so the attrition of the Ukraine armed forces is catastrophic. I am horrified by this, and the only thing I wish is that the Zelensky regime sues for peace to end this thing, because all of these young men who are the future of Ukraine are dying for nothing. Because it's over. They can't win. Okay, all they can do is negotiate a peace treaty at this point. And the Zelensky regime is not going to negotiate it, because Washington and London and Brussels have made it very clear to Zelensky, and the reason for all these trips brought by Lloyd Austin and Anthony Blinken and Joe Biden and Boris Johnson. All of these trips are to emphasize to Zelensky and his inner circle that they cannot, under any circumstances, have peace negotiations or sign any kind of peace agreement.
Absolutely.
That it has to be fought to the end. And see, the end is the annihilation of the Ukrainian nation. Okay. And so that's why I'm horrified by this. And I think that Zelensky and his whole crew are evil. They are evil incarnate. Okay. And then the notion that in the West they're lionesses, as you know, like the next Winston Churchill and stuff like that, it makes me want to throw up, because they're evil people. I mean, just flat out evil, because they're throwing lives away for nothing. No, the worst. You know why they're throwing out lives away? And this is the truth. Because the Western leaders have told them, we will give you money, parenthetically, so you can steal some of it. We will give you weapons, parenthetically, so you can punt it and make money from weapons dealers. And we will, when the whole thing collapses in Ukraine, we will extract you and set you up in the West, wherever you want. And we will not prosecute you for all the money you have stolen. I mean, Zelensky is worth over $500 million, and he wasn't that good of an actor to have $500 million, okay? We will not prosecute you for all your theft and corruption, and just so long as you play ball now. And playing ball now means fighting to the death, fighting to the last Ukrainian. Yeah. That's the deal that Zelensky and his crew have struck. And it's to the perdition of the Ukraine nation and the Ukraine people. And eventually the Ukrainian people are going to realize it. By the time they realize it, it's going to be too late. And the deaths of countless young men and the death of the flower of the nation for nothing except the greed of Zelensky and his crew.
Yeah. Well, I think you got to remember, Gonzalo, the Ghost of Kiev might be a bad story, but it's going to make a hell of a video game. So just remember that.
Oh man, it's so sad. it just breaks your heart, you know. Look, you see the video of, you know, young men killed in combat, right? It's so horrifying. You know what really kills me? What just makes me want to sit down and weep, and I'm not kidding. When I see the Russians, a lot of times what they'll do is that sometimes the bodies are just so mangled up that they'll take the identity cards, the identity documents of the killed in action, and they'll put them on video so that at least their families will know, because, you know, the Zelensky regime doesn't report the people who are killed in action. They just report them as missing, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And Russians, which I think is actually a humane thing, are posting videos of the identity cards of the killed soldiers. And you see the pictures of these kids in their identity cards, right? In their identity cards or identity documents. And they're babies, you know, they're little 18-year-old, 20-year-old, scruffy little babies, you know? I mean, like I said before, I'm 54. You know, a kid like that of 20 years old, he can be my son easily. And I look at that boy and I think of my own self when I was 20. I was an idiot, as we all were when we were 20. And I look at that and I look at all the life that has been snuffed out, because the life I have led from the time I was 20 until today, it has been so enormous. And I hadn't experienced anything by the time I was 20. You know, everything good in my life has come after that. And I look at these pictures of these boys who are dead, and they will never experience that. They will never experience the joys of parenthood, the heartbreak of lost love, you know, the excitement of new opportunities, of new jobs, of new whatever, you know, the happiness of riding around in a motorcycle, the pride of being able to buy your first car, you know, your first brand new car that you paid, that's yours, you know, such a trivial little thing. And you see these pictures of all these boys, and they're never going to experience all those joys and even the heartbreaks that give meaning to a life, because a life is not all happiness. The true meaning of life comes from the difference between the highs and the lows. But a life cuts short like that, like in the pictures of these boys who've been killed for no reason. And you see what they will never experience, and it just breaks your heart. It certainly breaks mine. And that's why I want this war to end as quickly as possible, because I don't want more of these children, of these babies, to miss out on the beauty of life.
Gonzalo, that's a great way to end it. Thank you so much for coming on and having this chat with us. We appreciate it. And stay safe. Best of luck to you. And we'll keep watching your videos and your tweets, and just keep us posted on everything.
Yeah, Gonzalo. You got to come on the morning show and argue with my other co-host, Steve, about the Great Reset and what's going on there. But definitely what Fam said, stay safe. That's the most important thing. That was a big scare when you went missing. We really were just, we were very worried about you. So be safe. But I think where you're at now in Kharkov is pretty much close to Mother Russia now, correct?
Well, we'll find out soon enough. But thank you so much for having me on. I hope I didn't rant too badly.
No,
thank
not
you
at all.
so much. And I hope to see you guys soon again, okay?
Soon.
Thanks, Gonzalo.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
We got to go back to the beginning.
Back to the beginning.
Fam, if we go a little extra on these next two sections and you want to kick the third section over to tomorrow for tomorrow's pickup show, it is COVID-related stuff, and the guest tomorrow will be great. Tomorrow we're going to have on Steve Kirsch to talk about the Pfizer drops, some of these laws and all that stuff going on. So you just let me know, fam. But if you want to roll with it and finish it up today, depending on how long we're going, you let me know, because Gonzalo did go a little bit extra right there. Not that we care. We actually like it when he does that thing, because we're getting perspective, but we are deep into the show. So just let me know. You're driving and I'm sitting shotgun.
Of course, fam. All right, let's just get through this next two sections. Maybe we should put the COVID section for
tomorrow. Yeah,
with your guest, our guest,
Steve Hirsch. All right. Do you want me to read Super Rays, or you want to just okay, really quickly? Trey Wright, thank you so much. It says thank you for all you guys do. Thank you, Trey Wright. We will always love you. Bethlehem Tessafe, thank you so much, Bethlehem Tessafe. We appreciated the Super Ray contribution. It is always appreciated on the couch. And Roar Media, if the war in Ukraine is all but over, why is the Biden regime pushing so hard for $33 billion for the war in Ukraine because we talked about it, because that money is going to go into people's pockets over there. It's a big scam. Even if the war was still going on, FAM reported a couple weeks ago that the Russians were intercepting half of that weaponry anyways. So it was ending up in Russian hands. You know what I'm saying? I've said this before too. I made a tweet a long time ago. The United States of the West doesn't care who wins the war. They don't care who loses the war. All they care at times is if they have the war, because then their money scam, their freaking pyramid scam of handing down our money to everybody else works, and it works easily.
So that was very great, interesting conversation. It's always good to have conversations with people when you find things you agree and disagree with. It's great. Today, as Pasta mentioned, as we talked about in the beginning, is the 77th anniversary of the defeat of Nazism by the USSR, which Russia, of course, was a huge part of. And Vladimir Putin went and greeted the crowd of veterans, and they had this whole ceremony that just very beautiful. I can't wait to be there and see what, you know, it would have been nice to be there now and look at everything. But they were reporting, I was actually awake when it was live because I thought it would be really good to cover it, considering the fact that I'm going to be there and the fact that this is such a big deal, because as we said, it's different, right? It's different now when they're celebrating the defeat of Nazism while also being called Nazis by the West, while the West is funding neo-Nazis, the Azov Battalion, who consider themselves Nazis. So this whole thing has taken a whole other turn. And so Putin went out there and he actually gave a speech thanking the Ukrainian war veterans that were a part of this defeat, right? They were together fighting against the Hitler regime. And so today, this morning, Vladimir Putin sent his, yesterday he sent it a Victory Day greeting to Ukrainian veterans of the Great Patriotic War. The message read, "I warmly congratulate you on our great and common holiday, Victory Day. 77 years ago, thanks to the courage and heroism of the frontline soldiers and partisans and the tenacity and selflessness of the workers on the home front, fascism, which sought to enslave Europe and cause pain and suffering to tens of millions of people, was crushed. The immeasurable sacrifices made in the name of the common victory became a guarantee for our life and freedom. This memory cannot fall into oblivion." He's saying that because a lot of the media on the West is trying to dismiss what the Russia did as part of the USSR. Unfortunately, today, Nazism is once again raising its head and trying to impose its barbaric, inhumane order. Our sacred duty is to prevent the retaliation of the ideological heirs of those who were defeated in the Great Patriotic War. I sincerely wish the Ukrainian veterans and the Great Patriotic War the strength of their hearts, good health, and long life, and to all people of Ukraine, a peaceful and just future. So this is what he sent. And then this morning, of course, you guys can see the pictures on slide 9 of him walking with the his crew there, and then everybody just lining up and seeing. There were about 11,000 veterans that attended this whole thing, and people, of course, watching around on the side at the Red Square in Moscow. And there's a picture of Vladimir Putin. He was getting emotional when he was seeing, you know, the just the memory of everything that happened, and when he went through. So Anthony Blinken, though, didn't waste a moment to dismiss what Russia did a few days ago. He said on May 8th, 1945, V-Day was the day that justice triumphed over Nazi oppression in Europe in 2022. 77 years later, we must once again defend justice and democracy in the face of aggression. The people of Ukraine celebrate their democratic values, and we stand #United with Ukraine. And then they show a video about the USSR and how terrible it was. And it says by USSR, and it turned the S into a Nazi sign, even though the USSR was in fact instrumental in defeating the Nazis. So they're trying to rewrite history and diminish any sort of Russian culture or Russian any sort of Russian impact on the defeat of Nazism.
And that's scary. That's sad.
Yeah.
When you start fucking trying to erase people's culture, and excuse me for cursing, but when you start doing that shit, and really, I got a little touched a couple weeks ago when I saw somebody doing a ballet dance, and it was very Russian-like, and I was just so disgusted by what the governance, the government of the United States, not the people, and we have to continue to separate the people from the government, and that's what we have to do, and say this government is getting out of hand, and what they're trying to do to the Russian people and their culture and their history is disgusting.
Yeah. And meanwhile, of course,
Ben's favorite band.
Yeah. The ones that insert themselves into your iPhone on purpose in 2012 and downloaded their entire album, and then it just kept coming up
nobody
on my
wanted.
car. I would just connect my car and it would just start playing, and I'm like, and then and then eventually all the songs because it just would start playing every single time. It was the most annoying thing.
You can't even take those out, can you?
No, it's stuck on my iTunes playlist forever. It's stuck on yours too, probably everybody's. So YouTube's Bono, and we mentioned this with Gonzalo, right? And The Edge play a surprise acoustic set in Kiev bomb shelter. President Zelensky invited us to perform in Kiev as a show of solidarity with the Ukrainian people. And so that's what we've come to do, U2 said. And of course, he hangs out with George W., so he's a peace advocate. So Rolling Stone magazine laid this out, right? Vladimir Zelensky invited them. They did this acoustic concert in the subway. And this is what he said. Bono said, the people in Ukraine are not just fighting for your own freedom. You are fighting for all of us who love freedom.
There we go.
The audience, which included soldiers. We pray that you will enjoy some of that peace soon. Yeah, some of that peace that we don't even give to like the people in the West. As Gonzalo said, right? It's going to be very bad in a few months, especially for the European Union. But here, gas prices in LA are like $7. Like they're ridiculous. They're like 4 something here in Florida. In LA, they're like 7 and up. I don't know what they are in Vegas.
By the way, 5s. Some hit 6. We don't get to the 4s. They're 5s. 527 is like a cheap price. So,
and the price of everything. If you go out to a restaurant, if you go out to get
airline tickets,
insanity right now. It is impossible. And so we're at a point where this is
at the gates.
the real estate market too. Everything's inflated, right? Houses are worth a lot more. And the thing is, they're selling because there's a lot of investors coming in and buying up all this property. That's also happening. And a regular person, it's very hard for them to get a home at this point because of how high it is, the interest rates, and it's just like not a good time. But of course, we have money to give to Ukraine. We have to talk about democracy. We have to talk about all of this while crushing any sort of culture that is related to Russia, vilifying an entire group of people, just like we vilified all Muslims during the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. And of course, like we vilify everybody that we have to vilify, right? And so Blinken tweeted about this whole thing. And that's how you know that this propaganda, that this is PR, because Blinken, of course, isn't going to tweet about Bono unless this is some sort of celebrity to politician PR stunt, which is exactly what this was. And so he said, it's a beautiful day in the Kiev metro. The people of Ukraine have shown remarkable determination and resilience in the face of this brutal invasion. We stand united with Ukraine and support its pursuit of more peaceful, democratic, and beautiful days ahead. They love the word democratic. There is nothing democratic about what the West is doing right now.
Yeah.
And nothing democratic is coming to Ukraine because Ukraine is a failed state. It is not a sovereign state. It is a state ruled by the West and completely outside of control of Zelensky. Zelensky is a puppet. Zelensky has zero control. Zelensky, as Pasta mentioned the other day, would get whacked by somebody on some end if he doesn't.
Moisky would have him whacked in 3 minutes, fam.
So just so you guys all know, another great Democratic leader, Trudeau, was there as well, visiting Irpin near Kiev. So he showed his face there too. And it's obvious, they're bringing in all the players to show, oh, hey, we're all with Ukraine. No matter what the Russians say, we're winning this thing, blah, blah, blah. But as Gonzalo said, this is essentially over. This is essentially over. There's no way Ukraine's going to win this war, because as much PR as they want to put out, tactically, militarily, Russia has this, and it's just a fact. It's not, it is what it is. That's
Yeah. And fam, can I say something?
Sure.
When reading the phrase "city subways turned," excuse me, an acoustic concert in one of the city subway stations turned bomb shelters. Oh shit! Oh, excuse me. That guy did say if it was a bomb shelter, if there was any risk whatsoever, this cuck Bono and the Edge, which is a dull edge, and people like Angela Jolie wouldn't be visiting Kiev on a regular basis. Sure as hell, freaking Jill Biden wouldn't be there, or Nancy Pelosi for that matter, with Adam Schiff for brains and Anthony Blinken showing up, with Floyd Austin and Bojo walking around with his hair not combed. If there was any a drop, a scintilla of a threat of a bomb hitting Kiev, they wouldn't be there whatsoever. And it's chicken Kiev, by the way, not chicken Kiev. I will never bend the knee on that one.
Kiev. So let's listen to this amazing artist.
Oh, geez. You had to.
Yeah, I had to. It's for you.
Yeah. That looks like a bomb shelter. The fuck out of here.
I can't hear it, but I'm sure they can hear it. It's okay. I don't have to hear it.
Do they have the volume, Oz?
Have you a message for, let's say, who will be listening? A message for the United States, a message for Joe Biden. What is your message?
Of course, yes, I have.
Do you have a message for Chancellor Scholz?
Not for Joe Biden, for a lot of people, for all over the world. First of all, I want to thank you, Bono, and you, the Edge, to come here.
In the bomb shelter, lit with nice purple lights, and everybody has a
I
good
like those
cell
lights,
phone.
man.
And
I
I know,
want
but
those purple
that's
lights
not
for me.
they don't put those things in bomb shelters. There's not like, how do we want to make this bomb shelter look? It looks like the studio
The
has the
aesthetic
green
needs to
over here,
be-
the aesthetic. Oh, the purple over there. Give me a break, ladies and gentlemen. Can you believe the bullshit they are feeding you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Believe it, because they put a lot of money and they use people like Bono. They've been using Bono for everything. That guy's a
Globalist.
neoliberal.
Freaking
So-
World Economic Forum cuck is what Bono is.
Yeah. Oh, you
Always.
totally should have Gonzalo on the morning show so he and Steve could go back and forth about that.
I'd
That
love
would
to
be
see
fun.
that. Yeah.
So okay. Like I said, I was up early this morning at the crack of dawn, and before actually dawn, and Vladimir
Ready for the morning
Putin
show, fam. You ready?
delivered the speech honoring the 77th anniversary, of course, of victory over the Nazi regime. He did mention, though, why Russia went into Ukraine. Like in his speech, he went right out and said, this is why we went to Ukraine. The United States had and NATO had other plans, that they forced our hand. And then RT did a report. And the reason I'm putting RT out is so people understand why they're banning RT, right? Like that you're not going to see it on YouTube. You're not, you can't see it anymore on DirecTV. So I try to get some of the great stuff they put out there. And so this morning they talked about how a bunch of Russian leaders feel that the NATO nations are basically attempting to erase Russia's role in defeating fascism. They're even banning, as I mentioned earlier, the ribbon of St. George, which is that ribbon. You'll see it. But here's a couple of things of that, what they covered in the first video.
Openly, they were preparing for another operation in the Donbass to invade our historical lands, including Crimea. In Kiev, they were making statements about the possible acquisition of nuclear weapons. NATO started actively exploring territories next to us, hence they were trying to create an unacceptable threat for us in the vicinity of our borders. Everything pointed to the fact that the clash against neo-Nazi followers that the US and their satellites put a stake on was something that had to happen. It was becoming more and more dangerous with every passing day, and Russia prevented this hostility. We had to do this. It was timely, and it was the only right thing to do. It was the decision of a strong, sovereign, and independent country.
The conflict in Ukraine goes on. Western countries have been trying to twist certain parts of history, especially the role of the Soviet Union in fighting fascism and Nazism. The desecration or demolition of Soviet-era monuments and cemeteries has been taken to a new level.
Getting rid of Soviet symbols is the responsibility of all local administrations. There are about 60 places on our list where such symbolism needs to be removed.
Moscow has repeatedly condemned Warsaw, calling on it not to follow the lead of radical politicians.
This is not the first time we have come across such a shameful phenomenon, the war against Soviet monuments in Poland. Everything that is happening in Poland now is happening in violation of bilateral borders and the norms of civilized communication.
Traditional tokens of awareness have not escaped attention either. The St. George's ribbon, a key symbol in Russia and abroad and used for commemorating World War II Eastern Front veterans, has been banned in Moldova. The president said the ribbon's place is in the trash can of history. Other Western politicians are also not mincing their words when it comes to comparisons between the conflict in Ukraine and World War II.
Every Russian has learned about the siege of Leningrad during World War II. Sadly, history has repeated itself, but now it's the Russian government cruelly starving Ukrainian cities.
Taking two completely different situations and gluing them together, one that involves starving a city into submission, the other that has attempts at humanitarian corridors.
Is there anybody, fam, more full of shit than Antony Blinken? Is there a human being that's walking this freaking earth that's more full of shit than Antony Blinken? Him and his stupid ass guitar. I bet you he thought he was going to be able to jam with Bono and the Edge over there one day. Is it possible? Warren, I can see Warren, do you think there's somebody out there that's more full of shit than Antony Blinken?
It's a tough competition, but I would say no.
Yeah.
I think it's tough. Yeah, for sure.
Because he's got a bullshit detector over there, fam. I had that this morning. He's got a great bullshit detector. So no bulla, extra bulla. Jesus, man, that guy just makes me.
Yeah. So like the end of the video said, right? He's trying to take a completely different situation where it was a fascist that were literally exterminating people based on their ethnic origin or whatever, and saying that the Russians are doing that this time, even though, as Gonzalo just mentioned, the Russians have been good with their prisoners of war. You see all these videos. I share them all the time on Telegram of the soldiers saying, "Hey, we thank the Russians for treating us. We thought we were going to be dead. We thought we were going to die, but I was surprised they didn't. They didn't kill us. Blah blah blah." You know, so on the other hand, the people that have been exterminating Russians for the last 8 years in the Donbass, for the ultra nationalists, as what the New York Times and Washington Post are calling them, right? The Nazis, the Nazis, the paramilitary Banderite fascists that follow Stefan Bandera and that whole thing. Like, those are the people that have been exterminating, not just Russians, but people from Romania, the Romani people, the Slavic people, the people they deemed inferior. That's what's been happening. And it's interesting for these progressives or these, whatever, these people that call themselves leftists that are somehow okay with dismissing this very real Nazi element and say, oh, it's just Russian propaganda. You're spewing Russian propaganda. I've already been accused so much since I posted that tweet, by the way. And the things they say is disgusting, right? Like you should be tried for treason. You should.
Oh, don't listen to that asshole.
Citizenship stripped away. Oh, it's not. Stupid. It's just so many people. Many people.
So
saying these things, right? Like you need to go to jail because now you're a Putin asset, and they've been dying to say this for so long. Though they've been wanting this thing to be true, but the thing is, right now more than ever, what we're trying to do is dispel a lot of the lies, and that takes a lot of work, because we're really living in an era where the propaganda is so intense, and the Western media, of course, what they do is they cherry pick the coverage of what looks like it can help their narrative. So the second video, they kind of talk a little bit about that, and they compare Russians to Nazis, essentially, is what they're doing.
Yeah.
And the Western media has been going even further in trying to draw historical parallels.
The Red Army engaged in rampant atrocities and massacres during its occupation of eastern Poland, Finland and other East European countries in 1939-1941. Scenes nowadays from Bucha, Mariupol, Kharkov and other Ukrainian cities show that Russian soldiers over the past 10 weeks have perpetrated atrocities against civilians in Ukraine.
Some articles have given space for new interpretations of Victory Day.
As Russia's war in Ukraine continues, the day will take on new meaning. It's very much about galvanizing support for Russia in the present and showing off the strength of Russia's military forces.
US diplomats have even accused the Soviet Union of being an ally of the Nazis by cherry-picking specific episodes out of a much bigger historical context.
Putin likes to accuse his victims of being Nazis. But it's important to remember that in 1939, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union signed a non-aggression pact. Only after the Nazis launched a surprise attack on the USSR in June 1941 did the Soviet Union join the anti-Nazi struggle.
All of this makes not just a revision of the outcome of World War II and the bloody sacrifices of the Soviet people, they've been cancelled.
We hear that lately in the West there are more and more words that the documents signed by the Soviet totalitarian regime, which consolidate the results of the Second World War, should no longer be carried out. The results of the Second World War, as well as the sacrifices made by our people on the altar of victory over Nazism, are sacred.
And defeating Nazis. In fact, they've been doing that forever, because when you were taught in school, you were taught that the United States is the reason that the Nazis and Hitler and Germany were defeated, when actually the Soviets were the ones that lost the most lives and were the ones that were far more instrumental into this whole thing. And they're trying to say no, that wasn't the case. By the way, every other country made a pact with Hitler before 1939 at that point. Yeah. They all made pacts. They didn't know. There's so many movies you can watch. There's so many things you can go over. They thought this guy was just full of shit. They thought he wasn't going to do anything. They underestimated his ability to really harp on the working class people. And they didn't feel like they had to get involved in that, economic
They were making peace treaties, the fact that say they wouldn't like attack each other and stuff like that. It wasn't like it wasn't like Stalin said, yeah, I'm going to sign up and endorse Nazism.
Right.
Nothing like that. It was like a geopolitical peace treaty that says, you don't fuck with me, I don't fuck with you. And excuse my French again for cursing, but that's not what happened. So this is just stupid the way the American media is trying to rewrite history right now. This is getting to all levels of dumb. And you know what? If mainstream media wasn't already dead, it's now dead. Because people don't believe this shit anymore. It's like what Gonzalo said out there. They're not going to put lies out there. They might withhold information, and you can say that's the same as lying or not, whatever, that's up to you. But when they put something out, they put out the truth because they don't want to ruin their credibility. It doesn't seem like, fam, that the mainstream media and our government's playing by those same rules, because every single time they're wrong, they double down and they make themselves even more wrong.
Yeah. And they do this all the time. And then the last thing I want to read in this Russian section, right?
Yeah.
Is something's happening here with Syria, and it's not surprising, because Syria is a country that's also been hurt by U.S. sanctions, that's also been targeted with false flags, as you all know. So Syria, and this is from TASS.com, Syria is ready to provide assistance to the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republic. The Syrian ambassador to Russia, Raid Haddad, told TASS during a working trip to the city of Yekaterinburg on Saturday. For over 8 years, the people of the DPR and the LPR have been facing bombings, regular damages, and an unfair blockade by Western-backed neo-Nazis. As a result, thousands of people were killed or had to leave their homes. This is why Syria is working to provide comprehensive support to the republics, he said, when asked if Syria was providing humanitarian assistance to the Donbas republics. So that's happening, and that's no surprise that unity is it's on its way, fam.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in Syria, man. I heard a lot of people, a lot of countries, fam, from the global south are actually going to Syria to help Syria out over there. So it looks like Syria is going to pay it forward and go help out what's going on in the DPR right now too as well. And that's really awesome that they're going to do that, and the LPR and all that good jazz. Anything else for this section, fam? I think it was a great section. Thanks for pointing that out. I think that, seeing Putin getting emotional, I think a lot of people just think that this guy is just like a crazy friggin', Thanos of sorts. I really encourage them to go watch the Oliver Stone interviews. It is really intriguing and some great stuff over there. At the end of the day, we need to clean our own house. We need to take care of our own shit. And the American government does not represent the American people. And that's something we need to realize on both sides of the aisle. Stop trying to fix it from within and eliminate these psychopaths running shit around here. I mean, Antony Blinken and crew are just the worst. And they don't care. They'll get us all killed. They do not care.
They do not, fam. And fam.
Yes, I do have a super ray.
Colombia.
We all going to Colombia. Oh, yes, please do that. And I'll read the super ray after.
All right, so help us get to Colombia to observe their election, guys. If you go to our Give, Send, Go, and Pasta, I don't know if you can put it in the chat.
I'm going to right now.
Give, Send, Go, and help us get there. Flights are ridiculously expensive right now, and that's why. And then we have to get the hotel and the delegation, food and the transportation. So it's basically just that. And so we need to get there as much as we can, and because we're funded by you, we're demonetized on YouTube going on 16 months. And so we don't have, super chats on the regular. We do have Rockfin. You guys can donate on Rockfin. You guys can tip. You guys can sponsor us for $9.99. Or we have Patreon, but we're trying not to use PayPal as much right now because of everything that they've done to Consortium News and Mint Press. By the way, an update on that. They did give them back the their money, but they didn't give them back their account. At least Consortium, they wrote the latest article they wrote said that it was a mistake that got sent to them, that they were told they could do something to get their account back. They're not doing it. So they're not getting their account back. They're getting their money and that's it. So yeah.
Fam, I have a Super 8 contribution from Thomas Dickinson. Thank you so much. It's always appreciated on the couch. Fam, I'm almost finished with an article. I wrote a little quick article about 2,000 Mules. We did a little section about it before I watched the movie. Well, I watched the movie, and it's even scarier than I thought. And it really relates to what's going forward and what we see a lot of conservatives now pushing for when it comes to reform of our election systems. Some things they are pushing for are good. It's just going back to basics, going back to simplicity. But some things, fam, are a gift, a handout to the security state. And I'm writing this article. My friend Wyatt Reed is helping me write it to make sure everything is good, like you used to do, fam, when you used to look at my articles. He says the same thing. It's like I'm writing a screenplay over here.
Thank you, Wyatt.
Joey Butterfuko is looking at Ukraine over here.
It drives me crazy, Wyatt. I mean, I really, Pasta, I do need you to write a screenplay about some of this stuff.
I should, because that's what I do good. That's how I write. And even Wyatt says, I can imagine you'd be really good at this and stuff, because he goes, I can hear your voice when I read this shit. It's like I can hear you in my head. So but yeah, I'm gonna write it out, and it's really important.
Hey, yo, Pasta was over here.
Yeah.
He put
and
the water down.
Stop.
I can't even do it. Man. He has a way of writing these screenplays. It's so hard for me to write screenplays because I'm so decorative with my language that I can't just be like, she put it down.
Yeah. And then you and Wyatt are awesome writers. And you guys have never put it down. You just always mention that that's how I write. And hey, man, I'm gonna lean on that. There's certain things I'm doing. I do little projects every once in a while. Yesterday was one of those days. I kind of like I put my stuff in the folder. I had this stuff done for the morning show, and I'm like, I watched this movie. I'm gonna write an article about it because it's important. So I try to bust it out as quickly as I can, a short read. And I'm going to finish it on up and get it on out there because it's important when it comes to elections. And that's why, going to Colombia, I mean, when you go overseas and you see their elections, when we witness what we witnessed in Nicaragua, what you witnessed in Honduras, what we witnessed together in Nicaragua, what you witnessed in Peru, what we both witnessed in Honduras, and then what we're going to see in Colombia. And you hear this talk of drop boxes, like these things are legit and like these things should be used. No, And I'll get further into that about when I get my article out, and we'll talk more about that. And it's scary what the suggestion is, to suggest that we should keep the drop boxes, but then put video cameras on all of them.
Stupid.
You know damn well, fam, that face recognition software is coming with that, right? And then you know that the whole freaking country with our drop boxes is going to be used as a way of ushering on in facial recognition cameras all over the place, not to mention the way they track these things by using geo-tracking. It's scary thing. It's scary. I'll release my article. We'll talk more about it, fam. And I'm looking forward to going to Colombia and observing those elections. It's important from the anti-imperialist point of view. The way they always manufacture consent for a regime change is going after their elections. Their elections were pantomime. Their elections were fake. You can't trust their elections. Meanwhile, we have the worst elections in the world. But that's what they'll do. So that's why it's important, guys. If you got a couple bucks, $1, $2, $3, my writing, screenplay, whatever you can afford, go to givesendgo.com/support the combo couch. Get us our boots on the ground with our cameras and everything we got to do. And let's go to Colombia and let's bring you back exactly what's happening on over there. Because Colombia is one of those countries, fam, right now. We don't know where it's going to go, which way, with Petro or the old Duque regime. We need some honest reporting there. So help us out, guys. Get our boots on the ground. Get our butts.
By the way,
Let's
he's in so much danger, Gustavo Petro, that he has to be surrounded by men with shields,
Yes.
like literal shields. That's the situation that we're walking into in Colombia. It is not going to be a walk in the park. It is no Nicaragua. It's not even Honduras, because I didn't honestly feel unsafe in Honduras. The way everything was conducted and everything. The elections weren't as clear cut as Nicaragua, but they were still okay. I have a feeling these elections are going to be difficult, and it's going to be difficult for us to be able to film everything we want to film. So again,
and it ain't Disneyland, fam. It ain't friggin' Disneyland.
It's not Disneyland. I want to make it to Moscow. So
I want to make
please
it back to Vegas.
send us there. Yeah. And hopefully, we stay safe, and hopefully, our comrade Wyatt can also go.
Just had a donation come through. Boom. Thank you, guys.
Sweet.
Hit it on up. Give, send, go.
Thank you, guys. We appreciate you and everything you do for us. We know it's hard times. We know you should be stocking up on some bread and grow seeds and all of that, because as Gonzalo said, it's coming.
They should be stocking up on borscht, fam.
Borscht. I love borscht. It's very good. It's one of my favorite things. It is. I've had it. It's delicious.
I know, right?
No, somebody made it for me. Not going to go into who, but
I'll tell you guys later. All right, go ahead, fam.
Okay, so let's get started on this next section. Elon Musk jokes about getting killed. Now, I don't think a lot of people really caught why he was saying this. A lot of people thought, oh, he's saying this because he thinks he's some self-important dude that's taking on, the surveillance state because he's fighting against the liberals and he's, wanting to give free speech to everybody. But that's not why he said it. I think a lot of people miss that point, right? Because you're right. He's a billionaire and he's a narcissist and he thinks he's self-important. All these opinions about Elon Musk are irrelevant. The fact is he's trying to buy Twitter, and there's this back and forth happening whether he does it or not. So he posted this whole thing where he said, if I die under mysterious circumstances, it's been nice knowing you. And so people were like, why the hell is he posting this? Does he really think he's some sort of like working class hero, some Batman coming in to help the working class and help, the American people fight the surveillance state? And so I posted this picture because I have to remind everybody, who he hangs out with. And it doesn't mean that, he had little 14-year-old girls, but, he knows these people. He hangs out around these circles, so to speak, right? He hangs out around these circles. And of course, Caitlin Johnstone came right in, right? And said, you're literally a Pentagon contractor. Because if anybody is going to hurt Elon, it's not going to be the United States or the defense industry. The defense industry and him are making a really great business right now. And I'll explain to you guys exactly how great of a business deal that is. But I think a lot of people missed why he said this, and we'll go into that. So first, just to remind everybody, right, the Pentagon awarded last year 160 million in contracts to Musk SpaceX. And this was last year, and that was on the Hill. The Department of Defense announced on Tuesday it will be awarding Elon Musk's aerospace company SpaceX 2 contracts valued at nearly 160 million to launch 2 of its Falcon 9 rockets. Space Exploration Technologies Corporation, Hawthorne, California, has been awarded 2 individual firm fixed price task orders totaling 159,721,445 under the National Security Space Launch Phase 2 contract, the Pentagon said in the statement. And Business Insider reported that that was the 3rd time that SpaceX had been awarded a Pentagon contract and had previously won a $149 million contract to missile tracking satellites. And they had also won 40% of an agreement to launch new rockets for Space Force in July, along with another 60% going to ULA. And other companies that were considered were, of course, Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin company. Why do these billionaires have an obsession with like launching rockets in space? I think it's kind of weird. But hey, you know, a lot of people are into that. Elon Musk has 79 million Twitter followers. I think he has one of the largest accounts. I think Justin Bieber is up there, even though he doesn't tweet. But the Washington Post posted this, and this was recent, as of a month ago, where this is going to bother some people because this is really irritating to me. This is coming out of your money, out of taxpayer dollars, because the U.S. is paying millions to send Starlink terminals to Ukraine, contrary to what SpaceX claims. And what that means is that you're paying for it. So they reported after Russia launched its invasion, Ukrainian officials pleaded for Elon Musk's SpaceX to dispatch their Starlink terminals to the region to boost internet access. Starlink service is now active in Ukraine. More terminals en route. Elon Musk replied to a lot of online fans. So there you go. He's directly supplying internet to Ukraine to boost their internet access. And then, of course, the company has continued doing actions as charitable gestures. I'm proud that we were able to provide the terminals to folks in Ukraine. The SpaceX president, Gwynne Shotwell, said at a public event, I don't think the U.S. has given us any money to give terminals to Ukraine. But the reality is that that's not true. According to these documents obtained by the Technology 202, the U.S. federal government is in fact paying millions of dollars for a significant portion of the equipment and for the transportation costs to get it to Ukraine. On Tuesday, the USAID, the CIA cutout essentially, announced that it purchased more than 1,330 terminals from SpaceX to send to Ukraine and donated nearly 3,670 terminals and the internet service itself. While the agency initially called it a private sector donation valued at about $10 million, it didn't specify how much it is contributing for the equipment or for the cost of transportation. After the announcement, the agency removed key details from its release and now states that the USAID has delivered 5,000 Starlink terminals to Ukraine through a public-private partnership with SpaceX, but does not specify the quantity nor value of the donations. So in essence, the USAID agreed to purchase 1,500 standard Starlink terminals for $1,500 a piece and to pay an additional $800,000 for transportation costs. And that's what was shown in the documents, which adds to over $3 million in taxpayer money to be paid to SpaceX for the equipment to be sent to Ukraine. So you, the American people, are paying for this billionaire's company to send this weapons and this internet aid and all of this to Ukraine, which then ends up in the hands of neo-Nazis, which then ends up in the hands of Russia anyway, because they're losing the equipment nonstop. This isn't helping any Ukrainians. It is, in fact, helping to continue their demise because they aren't winning this conflict. And I think that people should be upset that they everyday working people that can barely afford to pay their taxes, that some of them have been unemployed for the last few years, that, you know, as everything is rising, inflation is at a 40-year high, have to pay for a war they did not consent to. You did not consent to support this. And a lot of people, you know, will be like, oh, well, you know, that's not how it works. MMT says otherwise. Well, this is how it is right now. American people are paying their money to fund this billionaires company to provide this to Ukrainian military, which is made up of Nazis, right? And so they said, the USAID spokesperson said that this was made possible by stakeholders whose combined contribution valued over 15 million and facilitated the procurement, international flights, ground transportation, and satellite internet service of 5,000 Starlink terminals. But the agency declined to question about how much USAID funding is going towards buying and transporting equipment for Ukraine, referring them to SpaceX, and SpaceX did not return a request or a comment for the specifics of the finances. So they don't want to tell people how much money the government is funding and subsidizing Elon. So when people say that Elon Musk is this great guy, he's innocent, and that he's, you know, some sort of like hero, he is literally being funded by the war. And whether or not that war is won by the West doesn't matter. He's making a killing off of this. He's making a ton of money. And I think that's important to note. I don't think people realize a lot of the time when they become these fans of Elon Musk that he is literally making a literal killing off of this, and you are paying for it.
Yeah. In one way or another, it's like what Gonzalo Lira said. Like to think that another billionaire is going to bail you out of this whole thing. And that's how you know we've become a complete oligarch, when people are desperate for billionaires to come save us. We're going to have to be our own Moses, as I believe what he said. And that is so true. We have to take care of ourselves. You know, we've been pointing out for quite some time that Elon Musk has got a lot of his money subsidized from the government, subsidies from the government paying him for his satellite that will be used in Ukraine as a weapon, you know, to use it for their drones and whatnot, and making statements like, well, coup who we want to coup. So he's okay with the empire going around and stealing resources from wherever they want. So he's part of the whole cabal of sorts, and we shouldn't be holding our breath hoping that Elon saves us. We should be, you know, putting behind our what's the word I'm saying? Our guff behind the system to make sure the system is fair when it comes to, you know, our speech, when it comes to freedom of press, when it comes to censorship. You know, these companies should play by rules, and they should be, you know, have to be held to those rules and those laws. And they're not. They're getting away with it. Why? Because the United States government and big tech works hand in hand. We all know this.
Yeah, and again,
part of it. Yeah.
American taxpayers are paying for him to do that, because when you have the USAID backing, that you have that funded by American taxpayer dollars. So that's why they're not releasing how much money is actually being put out there. So you know how he posted that tweet, like he's saying, if I die in mysterious circumstances, blah, blah, blah. Well, he posted that after he posted this. He actually tagged this person. And if you go to that person's account, they're like a Russian account with lots of followers. And they reportedly sent this to Russian media, right? This is what he says. And when you translate it, this is what it says. It says, from the testimony of the captured commander of the 36th Marine Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Colonel Dmitry Kormayankov, it turns out that the internet terminals of Elon Musk's Starlink satellite company were delivered to the militants of the Nazi Azov battalion. Of course they were, because that's literally where they're going to end up. And the Ukrainian Marines in Mariupol by military helicopters. According to our information, the delivery of the Starlink equipment was carried out by the Pentagon. Elon Musk, thus, is involved in supplying the fascist forces in Ukraine with military communication equipment. And for this, Elon, you will be held accountable like an adult, no matter how much you'll play the fool. So here they're saying we're gonna essentially hold you accountable because you're donating money to you're not just money, weapons and all of this equipment to Nazis. And this is what the Russian government knows this. You're going to be held accountable. He took that as a threat and said that they were threatening to kill him. So he's responding to Russians. he's not responding. He's not talking about the surveillance state or like the deep state killing him. He's talking about Russians. He's insinuating that these Russian people, that the Russian state is going to kill him. And he tweets this and says the word Nazi doesn't mean what he seems to think it does. So he's denying that these people are Nazis, right? And so Max Blumenthal posted underneath his post of an old article that the Gray Zone wrote in 2018 talking about the U.S. arming and assisting neo-Nazis in Ukraine while Congress was debating another issue. And he wrote, Andriy Beletsky, founder of the U.S.-backed Azov Battalion, has pledged to lead the white races of the world in the final crusade for their survival against the Semite-led Untermenschen. So these are real Nazis. And so he posted that to tell him, like, no, this is what they mean. This is who the Azov Battalion is. And they have claimed that they are Nazis as much, right? And so, there was a video, but they took it down. But it was just a video just showing you how one of the Azov members was gloating about what they do and what they stand for. Yet another video. We've shown a ton of those. But yeah. And the last thing, fam, I don't know, before you say anything, this is what he means by free speech. And I want to get your take on this, fam. He put this up a few days ago. He says, by free speech, I simply mean that which matches the law. I am against censorship that goes far beyond the law. If people want less free speech, they will ask government to pass laws to that effect. Therefore, going beyond the law is contrary to the will of the people. So I don't think it's, I agree with that, because if people want less free speech, they will ask the government to pass laws to that effect. That's the problem right now, is that some idiots want less free speech because they don't agree with somebody else's viewpoint. So that doesn't work either, because free speech should be free, period.
Yeah.
In this country, like, we're an empire in the West, like there should be a free flow of information. There should be like zero control, unless you're, like we talk about, yelling, incite, like literally saying, I'm going to go kill someone at this, blah, blah, blah. Like that's a whole other that's a realm. But we're talking about free speech where we're saying this, or we're saying, no, I don't agree with you, or I disagree with you, and this and that, and Russia, the perspective of Russia and the perspective of Ukraine, whatever it is, should allow that. But when you say that it's up to some people to demand to pass laws to limit free speech, I mean, I guess if people want that, they can, but we don't have a fair system, so that's not going to happen. So I feel like he's a little wishy-washy with what he thinks free speech is.
Well, he's trying to toe the line, play both sides, kind of shit like that. You can see the kind of mindset of him kind of pivoting towards like this. Oh, these are not Nazis and Russians are bad. You can see him where he's geopolitically going to play a part, and he has invested interest too. He has a stake in the game. We've just been saying this for how long, that he's been using Starlink to probably fly Ukrainian drones all over the place, and then we just got the receipts right there. I mean, I don't, once again, I don't know if you consider these receipts, but we've talked about this before about his involvement. He does not shy away from backing the empire's move when it comes to war or acquiring or stealing resources. We saw that with the we'll coup who we want to coup. And the fact is that he's also, this statement here is very, very scary, that he's manufacturing consent for those who stretch the limitations, who make it vague on what is inciting violence or what is, illegal and stuff like that. Or in this case, in the United States, what is hate speech, right? And we've seen people in this country, especially when it comes to big tech, working with the government, Jen Psaki and all these things, they wear it like a badge of honor. They don't even hide it anymore about what hate speech is. And really what they're using is they're using the excuse of taking hate speech and then using it to just silence their political opponents or any dissenting voice. And it seems like Elon Musk is more of the same. You know what I'm saying? He's more of the same. And for anybody to think that this guy was going to come out like Superman, and for those who are saying, well, let's see what happens. No, we don't need to see what's happening. If you look at the receipts and you look and see what his company is all about and its connections to DARPA and how he does make his money, which is completely the majority of its subsidies to the United States government. The writing's on the wall. You don't have to wait and see. You should know right now. It shouldn't take a billionaire to come give us free speech. It is our God-given right. That's what we're supposed to stand for as Americans. For those out there who are like, oh my God, it's supposed to be set in stone. The First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of a press. End of story. There's no other ways around it. I'm not going to trust Elon, and I am not hoping for Elon to come save us because I don't think he will, fam.
Yeah. And that's a wrap, fam. I mean, I think it's important that people know the money ties are there. And that's just like very surface. Like that's just direct money ties from Starlink and his company SpaceX to the Pentagon, to the USAID, which they've admitted, okay, yes, we're funding these terminals and paying for the transportation and the shipping of all this equipment to Ukraine. So people can't say that he's not part of the establishment when he's literally profiting off this war, a war that we know the US shouldn't be involved in, a proxy war via Ukraine against Russia. And that's just it. That's just the bottom line. There's no going around it. And he's dismissing the Nazi situation over there completely because he has a stake in it. So, to all of the Elon, God, he has so many fanboys. It's insane. I just, he's not gonna help you, bro. No. You're not gonna be him, which I think is, that's what they want, but it's just not gonna happen. The guy's too rich. Okay. Nobody that gets to that point gets there through, working hard and picking themselves up by their bootstraps. That's an immense amount of money that you can go back to. Well, yes, he was born into a very rich family and this whole thing, and that's how he got to start. So
there's no such thing as a self-made billionaire in the West. Get it straight. Even Bezos, ladies and gentlemen, even Bezos, no such thing. Bezos' grandfather was one of the first directors of DARPA. Please get it together, ladies and gentlemen. And you can go watch Jason Burtmus's film he did last week on Elon Musk. He's got all the receipts there for you. Lays it out for you, plain and simple, what he's all about. Anything else, fam?
That's it, fams.
ARAM left a little love. Thank you so much, ARAM, for the Super 8 contribution. As always, appreciated on the couch. Guys, we have 157 people in the Rockfin. We do great Rockfin numbers, but we only have 71 thumbs up. Hit the button. Hit that like button. Hit the tweeter. Tweet it on out. Hit the Facebooks. Facebooks it on out. Do what you got to do. Like, share, subscribe. If you got yourself an extra $9.99 a month that you want to help out with, subscribe to the Combo Couch. Be one of our premium subscribers. Not only will you get our premium content, but everybody else is on the platform across the board for that one low price of $9.99. And if you really got a few extra bucks, you can buy a yearly subscription at a reduced price. We don't have anything that we put behind a paywall, but we do invite people to come in for our morning show, AM Wake Up. That's me and Steve from Slow News Day. You can watch it on Combo Couch premium subscribers. And thank you to everybody who left the Ray tips today, the Super Ray. We appreciate that. And you can always watch it for free on Slow News Day. We have a hell of a week, fam. Tomorrow in the morning, 7 o'clock, out of the gates, Dr. Peter McCullough will be coming on, joining the Combo Couch to talk about the Pfizer data drops, as well as the IHR, which are the international health regulations. We're following it up on the Combo Couch tomorrow with Steve Kirsch. That's right. Steve Kirsch, one of the hottest Substacks out there when it comes to the boop and everything involved. He'll be coming on talking about those data drops as well on Wednesday. Fam, I believe you have Vanessa Beeley in the house, correct?
Vanessa Beeley will be talking
on the Combo
about
Couch. Early
Russia, Ukraine.
Oh, yeah.
And the parallels to Syria, which I think is an important note.
And Vanessa Beeley's just, everybody loves Vanessa Beeley. She's amazing when she's on any show. Tune on in Wednesday night. On Wednesday day, fam, I have a secret little fun, 2 special guests. I'm not saying who. They're going to be fun guests in the morning on the morning show. It's a surprise for Steve. Thursday on the morning show, we have Jay Fod. And then Friday day, we're having Steve Kirsch on. And Friday night, fam, I have to confirm with you about a guest, possibly our guy who's going to be leading our delegation, James Patrick Jordan. He wants to come on. I think it would be great to have him on. The guy's been on several shows before talking about Colombia. He's one of the Colombia guys, and maybe we can have a chit chat with him on Friday if you're interested. And that will be a great, crazy, busy week. So a lot of great guests on all our shows. So please come check us out. Subscribe, like, do what you got to do. You can always go to thecombocouch.com, find out where you can help us out. We do also have a Patreon if you want to do that. But like Fam said, we're trying to keep our eyes, when it comes to the Patreon and the PayPals, We never know what can happen tomorrow with those guys. So Rockfin right now has been our safest bet.
Also, guys, eyes on Brazil because Victoria Nuland just visited Brazil.
Oh, shit. And Lula just pretty much gave a little snuff to the United States, saying if Biden was really serious, he would have flown to Moscow immediately to make sure there was no war and that they propagated the war. And how dare them give all that money to Ukraine while leaving their own citizens in the cold. So Lula was pissed off. Our State Department had a lot to do with putting him behind bars. This was something that was exposed by Glenn Greenwald. It's going to be a serious fight, fam. Bolsonaro versus Lula. You know,
In October.
It's going to be cray-cray. So hopefully you can help the Convo Couch, and that will be our second trip of the year for international elections. But we're going to keep on plugging. Thank you to all who went to the givesendgo.com/support the Convo Couch. We got a lot of work to do. Boots on the ground, fam. You got anything else?
That's it, fam. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for supporting us.
We'll be back tomorrow. For Pasta Jardula.
From Fiorola.
Oz on the ones and twos with Uncle Warren hanging out in the background.
Convo out.
See you guys. Go to Roar Media. Go to Extra Bulla.
Extra Bulla.